Hello and welcome to the third Coronavirus Lockdown Livestream. I'm delighted to be joined by friend and colleague Covert Fade.
Hey Lloyd, how you doing?
I'm so glad that worked because up during the opening intro, so I was like, I hope his audio is working and everything. Otherwise, I'm just going to be talking to a cartoon. So.
Yeah, I was having some weird technical issues on this end, but I think everything seems to have literally fixed itself during the intro. So
wonderful. We can see Jehovah's hand in matters.
Clearly, yeah, absolutely.
So you are joining from the motherland, from Britain.
I am indeed.
And yesterday it was announced, since this is in fact the Coronavirus Lockdown Livestream.
Yeah.
Yesterday, Boris Johnson announced that Britain was effectively going into a lockdown of sorts, including all unnecessary travel being restricted and places of worship being closed down. So how is this affecting you and what are your thoughts?
So for me personally, I mean, in the general sense, obviously I've kind of got the I'm locked down the same as everyone, so I can go out to get food and essential supplies. I can go out once a day for exercise. And I think there's a couple of other scenarios in which you are allowed to go out, but the general idea is don't. And the police will enforce it if they catch you. On a more kind of on the point you made about religious gatherings being religious gatherings at places of worship being closed. That comes as a huge relief because I have, as I think I've said quite a few times on the show, I have family members who are JWs who are very elderly, and they are in the prime category for the risk for the coronavirus because from what I understand medically, I mean, it can be a risk to anybody. But if you are in certain health categories or certain age categories, it's significantly much more of a risk. And my worry was, and this is the problem, this is the unpredictability of the governing body. You never quite know if they're going to go, well, now is the time to obey Caesar's law, or if they're going to go, well, now is the time to make our stand and show that we're not afraid of something. And so I was a little bit worried when this all kicked off as to which way the governing body were going to go. It does seem as if they are telling Jehovah's Witnesses to obey Caesar's law. So in the UK, where the instruction basically is don't go to Kingdom Halls, all the Jehovah's Witnesses are going to comply with that. And my family members actually already were. They were already using the JW Live, I can't remember what it's called, but the streaming thing to remotely attend the Kingdom Halls, which I was very glad to hear. And from what I understand, a lot of JWs, this is kind of from those JW family members, a lot of other JW people who were in a high risk category were doing the same thing. So it looks as if there was an outbreak of common sense there, which I'm very relieved by.
Let's just add Sasha. He's lurking in the background.
Hey.
So Sasha, let's just do a mic check first. How are you? And let's do a bit of small talk.
Testing. 1, 2,
What's
3.
the weather like where you are, Sasha?
Do we really care?
Well, actually, I care because the weather immediately. In fact, I'm looking at the bunker door now, and there is literally snow on the vertical pane, which tells you something. About the conditions outside the bunker. It's a bit like Hoth in my corner of the world. So it really is taking on an apocalyptic feel where I live.
Lloyd's Tonson's going to freeze before he reaches the first marker.
Indeed.
So.
Indeed. I don't have a lightsaber to open up a tauntaun in case I need its warmth-giving abilities. But gosh. So okay, so Sasha, we were obviously just talking about lockdown in the UK and its implications for Jehovah's Witnesses. The policy so far, in terms of Watchtower, seems to be we will defer to Caesar. Whatever Caesar recommends, we should totally go with it. And in the case of the UK, there's now huge relief because Caesar is saying no more places of worship, which means that witnesses have to be in total lockdown. What's the situation in Australia?
Yeah, we've got exactly the same situation as of last week. Initially, the government law was no gatherings outside greater than 500 people and inside 100. So initially, I heard through my father, their congregation was going to try and continue to meet, but they would have attendance at the front doors, and once the number exceeded 100, they would have to turn away any latecomers, which would be a great ploy if you're a fader and you didn't really want to be at the meeting anyway. Look, I tried, guys, but but yeah, I did say to Dad at the time, isn't that really kind of trying to, this was back when we were talking, isn't that kind of just going to the letter of the law and just trying to skirt around the guidance? Obviously, the guidance is given by the authorities because they know best. Anyway, that's all changed because now the government has officially put in no places of worship, no gatherings, no services, which is brilliant, which is exactly the way it should be.
You say that, Sasha, but you will remember that I put a call out for voicemails.
Yes.
One voicemail, if I'm not mistaken, is from someone in Australia who is arguing that he's concerned about the situation. So may I play the voicemail? Unfortunately, I'm still not fully geared up to do this smoothly, so I'm going to do it over my phone into the microphone. Going to do it old school. But let's see if this works.
Guerrilla style broadcasting.
Hi, Lloyd. It's Simon in Australia, and I've got a question for you regarding your thoughts on the approach to shutting down Kingdom Halls and the ministry in light of coronavirus. From what I was seeing here in Australia, what I've read on Reddit and in YouTube comments, the approach to shutting down meetings has been haphazard, very piecemeal approach to it. Other churches like the Mormons shut down their services globally, and to me that seemed to be a real illustration of unity and love for their congregants because they didn't want to put anybody at risk. Whereas the Jehovah's Witness leadership has seemingly been doing the bare legal minimum, allowing meetings and the ministry to continue, pushing people further apart, but not just taking that simple step of saying, no, we're going to be proactive and we're going to shut down meetings. So it's absolutely last minute stuff that they've been doing, and only ever when they've had to. Meanwhile, the Bethels, well before the government told them they had to do anything, were locking down, and not only to traffic coming in, which is understandable because they'd have a lot of tourists, but also to people going out. So clearly they were very, very worried about their own well-being in the Bethels. But as for everybody else, the rank and file, so to speak, it was almost every man for himself, and the governing body seemed to have divested itself of responsibility by allowing independent discretion of elders, and that was most certainly not a good idea. Many theories floating around as to why they did it: financial, indoctrination, whatever it might be. I don't want to go into detail about that too much because I'm interested in your thoughts as to why there wasn't more unity and love in the shutting down of meetings worldwide. Thanks.
So Simon suggesting that it's been, quote, haphazard and piecemeal. Is it possible that things are being done differently based on what part of Australia one happens to be in?
Yeah, thanks for your message, Simon. Thanks for the voicemail. That may very well be the case. At best, we only really get information from different people in different parts of the nation. So it may be that there's a bit of a hit and miss approach being taken. My understanding is that they have issued guidance from Bethel, i.e. from the governing body, and then through the Australian branch to try and have a uniform thing. And the only reason I base that is I've heard that there was a letter that was read out to bodies of elders last week that contained specific direction. So perhaps what you're saying, Simon, is correct, that was the case. Maybe they're trying to tighten things up. But but I sensed something else in your message that obviously we're looking more for the character of the organisation. Were they doing this out of love for the members, or were they doing it purely out of compliance or forced compliance? Interesting. Who knows? Other churches did take the initiative to close down before they were basically told to. And I guess what you're indicating is it seems more that the organisation has closed down only because they were forced. Who knows? Who knows?
My feeling, I've obviously said this already in my video on the subject. My feeling is that the organisation's response could have certainly been better. They could have been more proactive and swifter in identifying that this is a virus that thrives on human contacts, and that large gatherings at Kingdom Halls are perfect breeding grounds for the coronavirus. So therefore, from this point forward, no Kingdom Hall meetings. They could have gone down that route, and that would have been the most welcome reaction. Instead, their attitude was, let's decide on the ground according to what Caesar's restrictions are locally. But if things have to happen from home, then that's what we're going to do. I don't know what you think, Covert and Sasha, but I still can imagine them reacting in a far, far worse way when we're dealing with a fundamentalist, doomsday, apocalyptic, black and white ideological group. I can easily imagine them saying, this is a test of loyalty. We need to stand firm and see Jehovah's salvation. No Jehovah's Witness is going to die as a result of worshipping Jehovah. So I'm relieved that there has been at least a deference to Caesar. And I genuinely think that will save lives.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I mean, I'm not too well up on how every branch is reacting. I know that in the UK, like you say, Lloyd, and generally worldwide, the general theme does seem to be, obey Caesar's law in this instance. And I think that's the issue. The issue is the unpredictability, is that we didn't know if they do that. I'm very relieved to see that they have, but as we've seen in the past, you've got the classic scandal of Mexico versus Malawi, where arguably the same basic problem was greeted with two very different solutions, one of which saved lives, the other which resulted in horrific death. And then also you've got some parts of the world where the authorities say Jehovah's Witnesses aren't to meet together, like in Russia, and the response of the branch is almost to try and rub the government's face in it. And then you've got this situation, which is a similar thing. Okay, we can't meet together, but then they comply. And so I think it's like you say, Lloyd, it's good to commend them when they do comply, because what you want to see is, encourage. When you see good behavior, you want to encourage it and commend it. And the problem is you don't know if you're going to get the good behavior or if you're going to get the doomsday cult behavior, where everyone decides that it's a test of faith and we're going to, it's okay, we'll get resurrected anyway. It doesn't matter. What's important is that you show Jehovah that you love him. And that's the issue, is you don't know what's going to come out of the governing body, which is the concern.
Indeed.
I think that's an interesting point you make, Covert, that whether they view it as a test of faith. I think deep down, the governing body, the leadership, they know damn well that a virus is something that you can't control. They know that Jehovah wouldn't protect them from a virus. And I'm pretty convinced that they're actually scared about the possibility that it can infect people, because deep down their faith is not strong enough to think that God would protect them from that situation. So whereas when you're facing opposition against governments, like in Russia, as you say, they can take a decisive stand to try and prove their loyalty. But you can't fight a virus. The virus doesn't care what religion you are.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Simon, for your voicemail. Just a reminder that if you want us to consider your thoughts in voicemail form, this is the address to use, speakpipe.com/Cedars. We still haven't received any video messages, questions, or greetings, but if you did want to record a 30-second message, we can play it on the show. And the address to either email it to or Google share it to is, let's see here. Yeah, I probably shouldn't give out my email address, but this is just one email address that I use. And if you do want to put together a video clip, a 30-second clip, this is the address to send it to, and we will play it on the show. But we have, at this time, 47, I think, watching. I don't know whether that's 47 purely on Facebook or across, 50 now, or across Facebook and Twitch, because we are streaming on Twitch as well. Yeah, numbers fluctuating as I'm speaking. But we do have some comments, which it might be nice to go through. This is one... okay, so I think we had Gabrielle on yesterday as well. Thank you very much for taking the time to do this. We, the lonely people around the world, feel much better thanks to you, Lloyd. Well, that's very kind of you to say, Gabrielle. And Nilda Gomez says, thanks, Lloyd. I missed this one. Can you do some of these at different times so people on different time zones can watch live? That's a good question. I guess I'm being realistic in what I can do, and I know my limitations, as it were, and I know that it would start to get haphazard, and I'd start to miss episodes if I were to change the times around, and also people would be wondering when the show is going to be. If I do it at the same time every day, and if that time happens to be a time of the day when I'm not normally doing a great deal anyway, then there's a greater chance of me keeping it going consistently. So, but I am mindful of the fact that we're broadcasting at a time when most of America is sleeping. Having said that, maybe there are some suffering with insomnia or because of anxiety, they're awake, and, maybe this is the time that they need it. So if in any case, you'll be able to watch the show on YouTube later. So hopefully one way or the other. And I noticed that the episodes that I'm uploading to my channel are getting views, which is encouraging to see. Yeah, Eric Larson saying, middle of the night live stream, I'll need to double down on my coffee. Yeah, Covert Fade knows all about coffee. He's a bit of an addict.
Oh, yeah. I have lots of it right now.
Okay, Joe. Sorry,
I was just going to say, one of the comments earlier mentioned that they were feeling the loneliness and feeling a bit starved for content or interaction. If I can just do a shameless plug on behalf of Covert, because I know he's too humble to do this. If you're looking for content, people, please check out his podcast, JW Forwardcast, because there's some really positive, helpful, upbuilding, well, that sounds like a trigger word, doesn't it? Encouraging podcasts.
Wholesome content.
Wholesome, that's it. No, some really great topics that he's covered along with the team over the last year or so. So delve back through the archives of the podcast and have a listen and be lulled by the sweet tones and wise advice of Covert Fade.
My only criticism of the Forwardcast is I'm not familiar with him doing too much news introduction, and I feel that if he has a real genuine calling in life, it's to introduce the news. So I'd just like to see a bit more of that, if that's okay, Covert.
And we want to rename him too, Lloyd. Given what's happening in the world, he's no longer Covert Fade. I think we need to either call him
COVID Fade.
Yeah. COVID-19
or COVID-19. Yeah. Which should it be, viewers? Let us know in the comments. Should it be COVID Fade or COVID-19?
Yeah, which one will get me knocked off Twitter first?
But Joelle there saying
that's very kind of you. Thank you.
But Joelle there saying that the timing works out well for her, and I suppose that's the point. No matter what time of the day we did this, someone would be saying, well, this is an awkward time for me, because that's the way it works. It's a worldwide, it's an organization, Jehovah's Witnesses, that has affected people all over the world. So if any time that we pick is going to work out badly for someone somewhere. So I'm afraid, America, you have to take the hit on this one. But again, you can watch it on YouTube after the fact. Esteban says, good morning, Lloyd, from sunny Germany. Esteban, is it sunny? because when I look out of my Croatian window, it looks like a post-apocalyptic wasteland. So what is the sun doing just a few 100 miles north in Germany? That's what I want to know.
It's lovely and sunny here. We've got
Is it
all the
really?
sun. Lloyd has all the snow.
Yeah. Clearly the creator has something against me, because he's trying to kill me with earthquakes, and now he's even blocking out the sun for me. I feel a bit like Job at this point. Esteban says, glad I made it to this one on time. I listened back to the other two I missed. Well done, Esteban. You see, finding a way around things.
Welcome.
Esteban also says it's the final part of the last second. So I'm reading an old comment at this point. He's given the game away there. I'm going back through some comments that were made even before I went live. Rianne saying, hello, Lloyd. Rianne and I are in quite frequent contact on Twitter. Oh, good grief. Morning from Windsor. There we go. A very regal place to be watching the coronavirus lockdown live stream from. Gabrielle is in Montreal. And Gabrielle has 2 inches of snow, so I'm not the only one who is dealing with Hoth-like conditions. Although I think Hoth had more than 2 inches, if I'm being completely fair. Let's just see here. Scrolling through. Oh, Kai Routledge is having a raspberry smoothie. Yeah, I don't have one to hand this morning, but I do have my apocalypse evading vitamin drink. So a little bit of consumer advice here, viewers. If you want to evade a virus, keep your vitamin levels up.
Well, I'm doing my part, but I wouldn't say it's a vitamin drink or vitamin. Sorry.
Yeah,
it's
Still fruit-based.
It's
Still
fruit-based.
technically fruit-based.
Red Bull and vodka. Does that count? It's more.
Isn't there a book that says?
That's like Red Bull and vodka. That's like drinking an alcoholic chemistry set.
Oh, actually, this is the first bit of sugar I've had all year too. So
Even I've had Red Bull and vodka at least at some point. Have you never had that, Covert?
I've had it once, and honestly, it was one of the worst things I've ever tasted in my life.
Cheers to that.
Yeah, everyone has to try at least once, at least to know how awful it is. But yeah, isn't there a book that says a little wine is good for the stomach?
I've read that somewhere. Yeah.
I've read that somewhere, yeah. Can't quite think where. Okay, so I'm being challenged at this point with the names. OX53, E71, EBE11E says, have a wonderful morning, Lloyd. Isn't it great to live in the last part of the last part of the last days? Nerve-wracking, if I'm honest, but I thought it would be worse. I was expecting fireballs. So far, it's just pestilence and snow and earthquakes. And the bunker is still in one piece, it must be said.
Good. I must say, I do like that it's the last days, D-A-Z-E. When it comes to the governing body, they are in a bit of a daze.
Okay, so Rianne, I mean, since we're talking about the coronavirus, Rianne says, I'm so happy to say our son is recovering quite well from corona. So
good.
I am starting to hear, I think we were talking about this on the WhatsApp group last night. We're at the point now where we're knowing people who are either dealing with it or recovering from it or experiencing symptoms. You know, this is, after all, a global pandemic, and it's just inevitable, isn't it, that there are going to be people watching this who are either experiencing symptoms or have someone they care about that's suffering from it. So our thoughts are definitely with you, Rianne.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I just put a bit of a call out to any Australians that are watching, though, when it comes to taking care of the community? It doesn't seem to be getting through to most Australians, not that I've seen. Business as usual, people getting on, people mixing in company. Sure, the pubs, the clubs, the restaurants are all closed, but it doesn't seem to be actually sinking in compared to what many of you around the world have had to go through, or the lockdown situation that the governments have put you in. So whether it's just Australian she'll be right attitude, but for anybody who's watching from Australia, feel free to drop a comment. Maybe you've seen things that I haven't, but
yeah, we actually had on that point that one of the reasons we went to lockdown last night was because previously the government had essentially the rules we've got now are the recommendations they gave about a week ago. And the problem we've had is that we've had similar scenes of like people congregating in parks, on beaches, going to pubs, or basically not taking the very strong recommendations seriously. So essentially the government had to say, look, if you're not going to be adult grown-ups about this, we're just going to have to tell you to do it. And so I think and again, I'm not being judgmental here because I have no idea how to handle a pandemic. And obviously I know people need to behave in the way that they feel is best for them. But I suspect maybe they'll do something the same in Australia where they'll be like, look, unless we make this the rules that are enforced by the police, a certain percentage of people won't understand or won't get how serious it is. So maybe that's what will happen in Australia.
You simply cannot trust the general populace to have common sense, can you? I mean, we've seen that in Australia with them all congregating on Bondi Beach, haven't we? I'm assuming that's no longer happening, but it was certainly happening fairly recently. And there was also a story that I tweeted about yesterday where Mormon missionaries were flying home to Salt Lake City and they closed the airport, so the families were all huddled together in the underground car park. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. That's a great way of evading the virus, all literally huddled together in an underground car park. So it just, you always have to plan for stupidity, unfortunately. Yeah. And I think it's wise for governments to make it absolutely clear. In Croatia, there are even prison sentences for people who knowingly, perhaps if they have symptoms or they've been in contact with someone who has coronavirus, there are actual prison sentences. Right. So they're taking it very, very seriously here.
Our health minister went on national television at midday today, did a very good press conference, very reassuring, along with other advisors. But toward the end, he said, I just want to take a moment and look straight down the camera at everybody and say, please, if you have been diagnosed, if you have received a positive test, go home. He said, don't go to the pharmacy, don't go to the grocery store. If you have received a positive test, go home, no exceptions. And it was nice to see him be so decisive, but as you say, it's almost like we need to speak to people as if they're children sometimes.
Indeed. Liz saying, and NHS texting people at extreme health risk to stay home the next 3 months, apparently. Yeah, I mean, goodness knows what must be going through the minds of doctors and nurses on the front line. It's one of those where they presumably get into their profession for the purpose of helping people, but in this sort of situation, helping people has a very, very real risk of them dying, and we've seen that in Italy, haven't we, with doctors dying because they've been coming into contact with it. It really is horrendous. Okay, so Arthur is watching. Hello, Arthur. Might pull you on in a little bit.
Hello, Arthur.
Actually. Yeah, got to have a bit of Arthur. Arthur, if you can set up with your webcam, I'll send you a link and you can jump on. Why not? Everyone needs a bit of Arthur in their lives, I think. So Kai Routledge, question, how is the memorial going to be conducted? Do they have an alternative method in place? So this was covered in more or less in the coronavirus report video on jw.org. The governing body's policy, again, is to defer to what the local laws are. But in countries that aren't in lockdown, they are saying the memorial is to be conducted in small groups or online. As of recently, they were talking about doing it in small groups here in Croatia, but I would imagine since then it's now gone to just watching it online. And indeed, I can say that my in-laws, my JW in-laws, are watching all their meetings on the television at the moment. So, yeah, Joelle Brown, they're saying Zoom, isn't it? Zoom seems to be the the new online Kingdom Hall for Jehovah's Witnesses.
Was there any clarification as to the specifics of passing the emblems? Because we've obviously passing things hand to hand is one of the worst things in a situation like this. Or are they standing their ground and saying you literally must pass it and touch the item? Or is simply looking at a plate and a glass on a table reverentially and respectfully sufficient? What's their clarification on that?
I haven't heard, and maybe someone can clarify in the comments if you're aware. I can only imagine, because if you think about it, they did a JW Broadcasting video a year or so ago, maybe a couple of years ago, where they gave instructions on how to make the memorial bread. So it's not impossible for witnesses to make their own memorial bread if they have. Well, presumably most people have access to flour still. And obviously wine is fairly easy to come by. So it's not inconceivable that you could observe the memorial from home and literally at the appropriate moment during the video, literally just pick up the glass and pick up the bread and pass it to someone who's sat next to you, or even just hold it for a while if you're on your own. So I don't know whether those are the instructions, but that's how I imagine them doing it.
It's kind of interesting, brings on a slightly, I was going to ask you guys this, and apologies if this was covered in a previous live stream. One of the things that's happening around the world right now is a lot of companies are asking people to work from home. Apparently what's happening is a lot of companies are kind of saying, oh, we can't possibly do that. Now they're having to do it. And the speculation is that a lot of people might be, a lot of companies might work out, oh, we can do this after all. Maybe we don't need as many offices. Do you guys think something similar might happen with Kingdom Halls and JWs over time, where they realize, oh, we don't actually need all these expensive Kingdom Halls. We can make you all meet in your own homes. And also it means we dodge legal liability for anything that happens in Kingdom Halls.
I made this point in my video. I said, because there's a part where it obviously shows them doing the meetings over Zoom. And by the way, hello, Sherry. Nice to see you.
Hey, Sherry. Please don't tell me you're drinking vodka and Red Bull too.
No.
Okay, cool. It's just Sasha who's being gross.
Okay. No, it's fascinating because there's a part of the coronavirus report video where it shows them all doing meetings over Zoom, and I've kind of put two and two together and said that, we could be glimpsing the future of the organization, because if it turns out that you can sustain a following without having the buildings, and the buildings are this massive cash cow that they're already starting to profit from, then you can see them reaching a point in the future where through sheer desperation, they say, right, we're getting rid of Kingdom Halls and people can just worship from home. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I can certainly see that being a route that they would go down.
But where is the element of control or the ability to monitor who is attending and who's not, and where is the follow-up? I mean,
it's not. I'm not saying it's ideal by any means.
No,
I'm just saying if necessity, there's going to be sacrifices, whatever they do moving forward. But if it's necessitated by drastic downsizing, then yeah.
No, it's a good point, but I can definitely see that it'll be the best time if somebody wanted to be a fader and just occasionally miss those meetings or two, or just check in and make sure they're seen and then drop off the link. It could be very convenient.
Indeed. So I'm currently messaging Arthur. If I go quiet, so feel free to talk among yourselves.
So Sherry and I are actually in the same house. We're just on different levels in the same house, in case anyone's wondering why we're on different screens.
You're self-isolating in separate houses.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm shooting Arthur a link. I've never before had 5 on one of these StreamYard live streams. Arthur's presumably going to try and get on, and if he can't, I suppose we have the option of you guys sharing a camera. But let's first of all see if we can get 5 on. Just out of my own curiosity, I want to know what the capabilities are.
And while you're doing that, Sherry, were you going to share some good stuff that you've?
Oh yeah, Sherry has got some wisdom from Daryl
Ray from Recovery from Religion,
yeah.
But it sounds like she may have lost her audio.
Yeah, I've lost audio.
She's lost audio, so we may have to come back to that.
Okay.
She'll play around with it. Perhaps use the plugged-in headset, Sherry. That works really well. Oh. You do have to press the audio and video button at the bottom of the screen to enable it. So anyway, sorry for our housekeeping, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us.
So Joelle saying, as long as you've got toilet paper, Lloyd, enough toilet paper to do my background, which is obscured at the moment by our videos. But I hope you like my background with the toilet paper and the watchtower. Just a subliminal message, really, there, I guess you could say.
So last night, Kim challenged all of our viewers to come up with the most creative alternatives to toilet paper, if I remember rightly. Was there something like that we were going to try and see? So anybody got some great ideas that they can use? Of course, Watchtower, Awake, Daily Text, anything like that. If you want to drop a comment down below and let us know what your best alternative is.
The thing is, I think the Watchtower paper, it used to be quite glossy. That would have been quite uncomfortable. I'm quite glad they're downgrading the quality of the publications, because I'm thinking it would have been a bit chafy if you'd have used it.
I think it's still going to be chafy. Come on. I mean, not that I'm not speaking from experience. At no point have I experimented in this direction. But it seems fairly self-evident that you're going to end up with a very sore bottom if you were to use magazine pages.
That's a great time for me to get audio back.
Welcome to the arse end of our podcast. Sorry.
Yeah. It's really not very edifying at this point, although, to be honest, the viewers have gone up. So maybe talking about chafed bottoms is what's going to bring in the viewers.
Sometimes you've got to do the clickbait, you know?
Yeah. This sort of stuff is perfect for YouTube, isn't it? It's people talking about stupid stuff.
Yeah, it's like what 2 days into the apocalypse, and we're all talking about chafed bums and vodka and Red Bull. It's like, yeah, this is humanity. This is humanity.
This is the best we're going to get.
Okay, so Cyril Klykov saying it's 11 a.m. in Russia and pretty sunny, so good time and good weather for the live stream. You see, we are reaching different parts of the world. Cyril is, I believe, in Moscow, I think. So, yeah, we are reaching through to people in all sorts of far-flung destinations. John Mario Chestjut is in Queensland, near Mission Beach, if we're going to be specific.
Nice.
Johnny Smith says the background is hilarious. I can imagine some JW households sitting at home with their stockpiled toilet paper and watchtowers. Greetings from Vienna. Vienna, not that far away from me, Johnny, and I'm hoping at some point to get up there for a meetup, although obviously the current situation is somewhat restricting in that direction. Hello from Australia. That's a huge glass. Sasha D'Souza. Presumably you know Kat.
Yes, we do.
Have I met Kat?
Yes, you have.
I have, sorry. I'm rubbish with names. Hello, Kat. Absolutely rubbish with names.
It's not what you think it is, Kat. It's okay. It's all good.
Is that a tattoo? Is that Kat's tattoo in the avatar?
No. It's because it's the word free.
Right.
And Liber also means free. So it's a very bit like Jessica Liberty. It's a very important name for her.
Okay. Oh, Arthur's waiting. Let's see if we can get 5 on. And there were 5.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
Hello, Arthur.
Good morning.
Do you have any anecdotes about using magazine pages as toilet paper? Because that seems to be what our listeners want to listen to.
Yes, actually, I've heard it throughout my ex-JW friends. They were thinking about which one is better, toilet paper or magazine paper, because magazines are printed on very fine paper.
I guess my tip, I'm trying to give as much consumer advice as possible. Again, stick to your vitamin C drinks, viewers. If you are desperate enough to use magazine paper, maybe wet it first and let it dry. You're going to soften it at least a little bit.
Pro tips, courtesy of the John Cedars channel.
Thank you. Yeah. or maybe if you have a shredder, shred it, wetten it, and then lay it in like a mat, and then let that dry.
You've been in lockdown too long.
You really want to lessen the amount of chafing where possible. So pro tips for you there on how to use magazine pages as toilet paper. Message here from Arthur Weber.
Oh, you'll
Lloyd.
have that, Arthur.
Yeah, I can read that. Lloyd, there is a Romanian saying, Dumnezeu nu bate cu bâta. God doesn't strike with a bat. So the governing body asked Jehovah to bring natural means of discouragement to their arch nemesis.
We shouldn't have him on, should we? He sounds like a total nutter. Moving swiftly on. Joel Brown says, I think people are scared of the word pandemic. It means worldwide. Not everyone is going to die. Thank you, Joel.
Oh, I think pandemic actually reminds me of a panda. You know, it could be cute. No,
extremely intellectual commentary on the coronavirus here, with Sasha's observation that pandemic sounds a bit like panda.
Have you seen all those YouTube videos of of cleaners? If you're at home in isolation and you're feeling a bit grim about the coronavirus, go on YouTube, YouTube baby pandas and zookeepers, and watch all these videos of zookeepers trying to clean the cages of baby pandas without getting hugged to death. It's really cute, and if you're feeling a bit down about the whole thing, it might cheer you up.
Right, we're having audio issues, so if you're not talking, I'm imposing a coronavirus lockdown live stream lockdown rule. If you're not talking, please mute, and that's immediately improved the sound. So sorry about. I think now that we're stretching the capabilities, it's also stretching our audio capabilities. So, okay, thank you very much.
I just want to say, it probably is worth pointing out as well. Just like Jolly's correct. I mean, you've got to keep this in proportion. It's like everyone needs to follow government advice, but the majority of people who get this are not going to die from it. I think they said like 80% of people will get mild symptoms. Then of the remaining number of people who get more serious symptoms, most will recover. But it's that the people who are in the high risk categories who are at risk, and because if you multiply that by the world population, you start to understand why we all need to take these precautions, because a small percent of the world population is a number that's far too large. So that's like you say, it's important to keep perspective both on the fact that we need to treat this very seriously, but also keep in mind that, as she says, most people who get this do recover. So,
indeed, and also precautions are being taken. I mean, it would have been nice to see the governments be more proactive and do things quicker, but mostly speaking, it seems that now people are realizing, look, we need to self-isolate, and self-isolation when there is a pandemic of this kind really is the way forward. So hopefully, the amount of deaths from this has been greatly reduced. Eric Larson saying, if there's any healthcare workers in the chat, thank you for your work on the front lines. It's much appreciated. Sherry Dubois, is that how you pronounce it? Says, I'm very concerned about fellow Aussies. They're not getting it, she says. Would that be fair? We have some Aussies on the lockdown live stream, so would that be a fair observation?
Yes, very much so, I'm afraid.
Sorry to hear that.
I work in healthcare, and we've, in melanoma specifically, we've had to adjust our messaging and our communication with patients as this whole situation has been worsening. For about 3 weeks now, we've been sending out text messages to say that if you've been recently overseas, if you have flu symptoms, if you've been in close contact with someone who's been overseas or has symptoms, don't come in, phone us instead, and we will reschedule your appointment. And I am stunned that we've had a few patients turn up who saw the text message and tell us quite cheerfully, oh, yes, saw that message. And then you ask them if they've been overseas, and yes, I've just returned from India 3 days ago. And then you have to ask them to please leave, and they get angry with you. It's really, it's quite frustrating that people are not taking it seriously enough in this country. There is a lot of skepticism and cynicism about it. A lot of people are saying, oh, it's just a flu, it's just a cold, it's not going to kill many people, and they have no understanding of how much impact this is going to have on the people that we love. It's, we're finding it very frustrating in healthcare seeing this.
I can imagine. Kim Silvio, who was on yesterday, saying isolation doesn't equal moving from Bondi to Coogee Beach. Yeah.
We'll give you the opportunity to repronounce that last speech, if you like, Floyd.
I'm not Australian.
Sorry?
I feel at this point you're mocking me simply for not living in your country.
You just need to think like an Australian. Think of the worst and most unlikely pronunciation possible of that word, and that'll be it.
Skywalker Beach.
Coogee.
Coogee Coo. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll think of Coogee Coo every time I see that word from now on. Eric Larson saying, Rianne, for weeks my family were laughing it off as just another flu. Now that they see what's going on, not so much. Yeah, it really isn't like the flu. It's very, very nasty, unpleasant stuff. Joelle Brown saying, we have had busloads of city people coming to strip our country supermarkets. Police has been involved. It's quite disgusting behavior. What's the situation with supermarkets for you guys? Because Deanna and I had to do, I'm just going to mute that microphone. Deanna and I had to do a run into town yesterday to get a prescription for Deanna's dad, who is, getting on in years and also underlying health, etc. And so there was social distancing going on outside the pharmacies. People were stood outside on the pavements observing like 2 or 3 meters between them. We went to one supermarket and they were allowing 20 people at a time into this massive supermarket. So there was social distancing in the line outside the supermarket. And we thought we don't really have the time to do that, so we'll try another supermarket. And we went to another supermarket, and it was like it was crazy in there. It was like the opposite of social distancing. Everyone was in there, and it was just a free for all. So it seems to be supermarket to supermarket being done differently. What's the situation for you guys?
Well, in the UK, I mean, from what I understand, it does vary from supermarket to supermarket. My own personal experience, because I know that social media has been full of shots of empty shelves. My own experience is you go to a supermarket. I think it's getting better now, and like some areas would be completely gone. They're like everything in a certain aisle would be gone, but if you go there after they've restocked, it's all back again. So there's a certain element of timing here. I mean, as they've said, I mean, I don't know what it's like in other countries, but in the UK, they keep saying, look, there's going to be absolutely no threat to the supply chains. The supermarkets are fine. The issue is people turning up and just hoovering everything up. I mean, I suspect, so essentially the message is don't panic, just buy normally. And if everyone just buys normally, this isn't going to be a problem. I suspect for the next couple of days, it will probably be quite bad because they've just announced the lockdown. So probably, in all fairness, everyone's now thinking, right, well, because the instruction is to buy as infrequently as possible, so I'll do my one big shop, and then I won't leave the house for like as long as possible, which is commendable. But I suspect that also means that the supermarkets will be like quite heavy hit again. But they are doing things like they're rationing most items now. You can only have like a maximum of 2 or 3. So yeah, it's been a problem. It's been a source of frustration. But at the same time, I think it's in the UK anyway. I'm not panicking about it because if a shelf gets cleared out, it gets filled up again the next day. There isn't any shortage. There's just it's a behavioural issue, not a genuine shortage issue.
We have a Twitch comment from Nesbo9. Snowdon has its busiest visitor day ever last week. People in the UK just haven't been taking it seriously. A lockdown with the threat, no fines had to happen. Yeah, Snowdon, fond memories of climbing that particular mountain. And yeah, disturbing to think that people are just, flocking there still as though nothing's happening.
I think they think that's one of the triggers for the UK lockdown was the feedback from like Snowden kept getting mentioned in the news reports over here of like they showed photos of the car park overflowing and it all backed down, and the speculation is that's one of the incidents that made the UK government go to mandatory lockdown.
Annika P says, hi, hello from the Isle of Wight. I work for the NHS. Well done, Annika. But working from home, awaiting redeployment to a community hub. Thank you, Lloyd, for the chat, keeping me sane. Oh, that is heartwarming to hear. I'm obviously anxious to keep anyone sane, but especially someone who is assisting in the community like yourself. So glad that you are watching along with the now 51 who are on the live stream. By the way, how is this working? I mean, obviously, I would have ideally liked to do this on YouTube. I can't for reasons I've explained. Is it working out okay with a combination of Facebook and Twitch? Twitch is completely new to me, by the way, and I understand it's mostly, or it is almost exclusively for gaming, but it does allow you to stream as well, and it also allows people to watch along anonymously without the usual privacy concerns that people might associate with Facebook. So I'm hoping that I've hit a good workaround, given the situation with my YouTube status. Okay. And Rianne saying they have no idea. It's so life-threatening. My son is 38. So this is your son who has coronavirus. That's quite disturbing because I'm 40. Ex-Navy, top physical condition, and he was in a terrible state. You just cannot be lackadaisical about this. It's not about, oh, I'm young, it's not going to affect me. Listen, it's a numbers game, and you could be on the losing side, ultimately, if you don't take things seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. I know the Australian statistics, I think from what I saw on the health.gov.au website today, it's the 20 to 29-year-old bracket that has had the most number of infections. I'm not sure how that translates to those who go to the critical stage, but it's not necessarily just the old ones. It's people in their prime from their 20s to 40s that are being taken down by that. People who are ordinarily fit, healthy, exercise, eat well, they're still being affected.
Indeed. Is there a danger, do you think, folks? I'm just putting this out there because obviously we're all thinking about the coronavirus, and this is the Coronavirus Lockdown Livestream. Is there a danger that by talking about it too much, we're only going to depress people even more? Is there a way that we can kind of, I don't know, in my first lockdown live stream, I read from Homo Deus, the section on pandemics, and how, you know, there've been worse situations in the past that humanity has overcome, without kind of resorting to denialism. Is there a way that we can, I don't know, give people more hope and just introduce a bit of perspective to all this?
Can I share something?
Sure, by all means. And I know Sherry had something to share as well. So,
most importantly,
yeah.
I'll quickly share this bit, and then Sherry, you've got some excellent practical things. But this was just from a little book.
By the way, if you don't mind, I'm going to have my breakfast while you're doing this.
Absolutely.
Carry on.
So it's called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. Now, we're not by any means saying that this is a small situation, coronavirus. This is very serious. But there's a chapter on there that talks about practice ignoring your negative thoughts. So the inner thoughts that we all have. Because most of these situations are just us either over dramatizing or thinking about the what if that may not come. Now, I'm not saying that should mean that we minimize our caution in any way, shape or form. We should be vigilant. But I'll just read a couple of paragraphs. It says here that it's been estimated that the average human being has around 50,000 thoughts per day. That's a lot of thoughts. Some of these, unfortunately, are going to be negative. Some, and most, are going to be positive and productive. Unfortunately, there's many that are going to be angry, fearful, pessimistic, worrisome. Indeed, the important question in terms of becoming more peaceful isn't whether or not you're going to have negative thoughts. We are. It's what we choose to do with the ones that we have. So in a practical sense, we have two options when it comes to dealing with negative thoughts. We can analyze our thoughts, ponder, think deeply about them, study, dwell on them, or dismiss them. But the option is that we can take our negative thoughts seriously, analyze what needs to be analyzed, and let go of the negative stuff. We are in control of our thoughts. It just says the same mental dynamic applies to thoughts of our morning, thoughts of the day ahead of us, thoughts of our future. We have the choice to decide whether we're going to dwell on it in a negative or a positive way. And it doesn't change the situation that's happening around us, but it does change our reaction to it. There's a lot of other points in there, but I just thought that was a nice way to keep things in context and perspective.
Bacon and eggs would be lovely, Gabrielle, but I'm eating. Oh, sorry. I'm eating columba, Italian columba, and it's very nice. Bacon and eggs is more of a lunch thing for me. I just find it a bit filling. Unless I'm going on a long journey and I'm at an airport where they do a full English breakfast and then suddenly I have an appetite for it. Really just depends on the situation. Sorry to divert you with what my breakfast habits are.
That's very important.
Sherry, is your audio still not working? Because we'd like to hear about your findings from Dr. Darrell Ray.
Sherry, your audio. We'll take care of that.
We need one of those little technical issue jingles. There's
one of those what?
Those little test cards that pop up whenever there's a technical fault on those comedy shows, and they go like dee.
Since we seem to be having a technical problem, I'm going to divert you all with this.
Still not working.
And welcome to this live and unscripted news report where we can confirm that for Lloyd, eggs and bacon is definitely a lunch thing. Controversy has racked the UK in light of this revelation, as the eggs and bacon are usually considered to be breakfast only, and eating them for lunch a moral travesty. We cut now live. We go to Arthur for his opinions on whether or not Lloyd can survive this PR revelation. Arthur, what do you think?
Thank you, Covert. It's nice to be back online. So my opinion is that Lloyd is a perfect survivor. He can survive in any conditions because he is guided by the Holy Spirit of Jehovah. So it's obviously, undoubtedly, he has his vitamins with him, and of course he's staying in strong health whenever there is a pandemic or another threat from this system of things. Back to you, Covert.
Thank you, Arthur. So, moving on from that, and thank you for the clarification. Moving on from that, we are going now to Sasha and Sherry, where we understand that unconfirmed reports of audio problems have caused a plummet in the stock price of Sasha and Sherry Incorporated. Going live to Sasha, how do you calm shareholders in the news that you may have been having technical problems in the corporation?
Well, thank you, Covert. We're not trying to calm you. We're just going to admit we do have technical problems, and it's a dramatic problem, and the world is going to end. Over to you.
Thank you for that, Sasha. Refreshing honesty there in the face of apocalypse. We go back to Lloyd now, who is continuing his defiance of the PR storm regarding eggs and bacon by continuing to eat a non-eggs and bacon based breakfast.
Amazingly, we've managed to hold on to around 47 viewers despite descending into utter madness for the past 5 minutes. And we have another half hour to go. How we're going to manage it, I have no idea. We really do need Sherry to restore balance to the force with her insightful observations.
Well, that's what we'll do. We'll hand over to Sherry. And, she's got some nice positive stuff to tell us. Have you got your audio working now?
Kind of. It's a bit dodgy.
Right, we can hear you, Sherry, so give it a go. Please rescue this lockdown live stream from its descent into utter insanity.
It's a bit of feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sasha, I think we're good
not a
with
good
Sherry's
idea.
mic. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Everyone can still hear me and I can hear you. Awesome.
Yes, perfectly.
Oh, good. Because I have prepared a few little things to help everybody because
And
I've
I'm
recently
actually-
become a volunteer.
I'm actually going to make you. There we go.
So I've recently become a volunteer with Recovering from Religion, which is a organization in the United States that helps people from any denomination when individuals are having questions and doubt and suffer incredible social loss and families cutting them off. Sounds familiar, I think. So I have joined that organisation in the hopes of being able to bring some of the wonderful work that Recovering Religion does in the US to Australia. And through that process, you do a lot of training and you have to read all of their policies and procedures. So I've undergone training to be a support group lead. And I have to say, this organisation is just incredible, which you kind of expect when the founder and president of the organisation, Dr. Darryl Ray, is a organisational psychologist. So they have an incredible core value and the culture is just fantastic there. So they've been definitely on the front foot through the whole COVID-19 crisis, and they've been very keen to support all of their volunteers, whether their volunteers are involved in the helpline or the online chat with people that log on to forums looking for support, or whether they're support group leaders, secular therapy project, a few things that they're doing. And they have given us, I've had 2 meetings already where there's been videos and very helpful points and tips on. Sasha's coming. Does that mean something's wrong? No?
We can all hear you perfectly, Sherry.
Oh,
Carry
good.
on. Yeah.
That's reassuring. So yes, some of the tips that came out last week is what I would like to share with everybody because I thought they were extremely useful and practical. So I have a list here. The first one was to hold a family discussion to lay out a plan for managing the upcoming season of confinement. So we do need to have these conversations with our families to work out what we will do. The second tip was to get outside daily, enjoy the sun, whether it's spring in the Northern Hemisphere or not so the Southern Hemisphere, to make sure that we're exercising. That if we feel stressed or ill, that we need to be sensitive to the caregivers in the household, to not take things personally, but to be quick to apologise and to anticipate our stresses. To maintain social relationships by phone, internet, or old school snail mail. So doing things like this, Lloyd, I think is incredibly helpful for everybody. And if you have children, we need to recognise that they'll be under stress too. So create new traditions, maintain structure and predictability, incorporate your outdoor time with them, play board games, model self-regulation for them. In the Zoom meeting that was yesterday morning, Dr. Ray suggested that kids thrive on structure. So if you allow for, say, school work between 10 and 12, and then you have lunch between 12 and 12:30, but from 12:30, everybody has to have a bit of alone time because that's important too. And if we're all in the house together, after a bit of time, sometimes that can fray. So it's important to make sure that we're looking after ourselves as well as each other. Then this next point was brilliant. To a degree, stay off the internet. Get daily news. We need to be aware of what's going on, but don't overload or obsess about the news because that is not healthy for you at all. He said in the Zoom meeting yesterday that trauma can cause obviously can cause damage in the brain. If you have a car accident or something sudden happens, it releases a lot of adrenaline into the system. But with something like this that is like a really long, slow car crash that just keeps seeming to go, and if you're watching the news constantly, you are injecting, dosing your brain with adrenaline all the time, and that is not healthy. So you do need to give that a bit of a break. We need to be aware of what's happening, but don't overindulge in it, because it's not going to help you in the long run. And I thought that was very helpful. Straight after he explained that, he then talked about having a practice of meditation, mindfulness, intentionality, yoga, and diaphragmatic breathing. If you don't know what diaphragmatic breathing is, do yourself a favor and Google it and look it up, because it's a technique of changing the way you breathe, making it a lot deeper, holding the breath before you release it. And what that ends up doing is countering the adrenaline dose in the brain. It relaxes, it's called a relaxed response. And that counters some of the chemicals that are being released in the brain during periods of trauma. So I thought that was very helpful too. Just a few more tips and then I'm done. He says to do something positive for your community. If you pick up the trash, if we hear our neighbour is in a bit of strife, can we prepare a meal for them and take something around? These acts of doing something good for someone else can be very healthy for ourselves as well. He says to take a long view of the crisis. Imagine the narrative that we'd like to share in 5 years. So when we'll be able to regale people with our stories over the pandemic crisis of 2020. Let's think ahead to how we'll look back at this time. I really like the next point because it's very true for me. He says to get out of your own head. And that's because we tend to overthink and the brain catastrophizes. So we need to do something to disrupt that cycle and remind ourselves to get out of that. So he also says to anticipate false peaks, to prepare a response and set our expectations reasonably. And I think that's a really good suggestion, because as we move further into this crisis, we may hear of things that are going well, like we hear in China that they're not getting as many new cases anymore, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're through that crisis, because they still have people coming into the land and they've got to be careful to not have a second wave. So if we sort of set our expectations that we've got a period of time to get through yet, this is not going to be done and dusted very quickly, then we are not setting unreasonable expectations of hope that we're being practical and rational through this process. So they're just a few thoughts that I thought I would share with everybody. If you go to the Recovering from Religion website, they've got lots of resources there that can help people through this, especially, we have to say, for people that have come out of religion where those who are in religion think this is the end of the world, it's Armageddon, and this is the end. And that can be extremely triggering for us who have left religion. So we need to sort of keep that in perspective and not think that it means anything more than it's life. It's the way diseases go.
Indeed.
I finished speaking now.
No, that was fantastic. Very, very timely advice there. Thank you for relaying that information. And the website that Sherry is referring to is recoveringfromreligion.org. I think Dr. Ray he's either a president or a board member of that organization, and
he's all of the above, Lloyd.
All of the above.
He's the founder, president, and he's on the board. And I should also mention that Shanna Rubio, who we may all remember from the Leah Remini aftermath, she's on the board of Recovering from Religion now, and I think that has helped tremendously to that organisation understanding what it's like for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses.
What a fantastic choice. She really knows she knows all about the worst that religion can do. So that was an inspired pick.
Yes.
And please do check out recoveringfromreligion.org if our religious background is causing us undue anxiety, especially in light of current events. I think that would be a good resource for you. But no, that was very helpful. Thank you. And we have had one or two comments inspired by what you were saying there. Let me just find it. Gosh, lots of comments coming through. Let's see here. Yeah, Lisa Noonan saying, agree, you want to be aware, but don't obsessively watch or you'll drive yourself insane. I think there's definitely a balance to be struck, isn't there? We need to kind of manage our emotions at times like this to a degree.
Definitely.
Twitch comment from Braun Flying. I'm not active in service and I avoid all meetings I can. It's so nice that all meetings are cancelled, but now Zoom meetings is getting started. Yeah, it all seems to be transferring over to Zoom, doesn't it? Scylla Tarok, I think, is Scylla a friend of yours, Arthur?
It's Chilla Turk.
Oh, good grief. You see, I'm getting so much pronunciation shaming in this show. What is it with you all? Could you?
Well, because Chilla is Hungarian.
Okay.
So you better pronounce it with a proper Hungarian accent.
Right.
Well,
can you repeat it then? Let's have a second go.
Török Chilla. Yeah, like that.
Török Chilla.
Szia Chilla.
Okay. And anyway, Chilla says, I'm preparing homemade masks right now in order to distribute in my family and neighborhood if required. Lovely to listen to this live streaming in the background. Well, lovely to have you here, Chilla. Sorry if I butchered the pronunciation of your name, but Arthur has come to the rescue. He does serve a purpose occasionally. Vicky Wells says, single parent, kids now not able to see their dad as we don't live together, overwhelmed, especially as unlikely to only be 3 weeks. Yeah, that was an interesting one because I was on Twitter yesterday when they were announcing the lockdown, and there was one Twitter user saying, what happens if you're in a separated family? So in other words, you're one parent and you happen to have the kids, but you're separated from the child's father or mother. What happens then? Who gets the children? So still a bit of uncertainty here, and I can imagine it playing havoc with, divided families where there's already kind of like a very fragile piece, as it were. So really feel for you there, Vicky. Rianne, I think
Lloyd,
yeah.
Sorry, Lloyd, I was just going to mention, Vicky, reach out to us at JW Survey so that we can give you some extra support. You don't have to do this alone. So make sure you send us an email and we can have a chat, do whatever we can to make it a bit easier for you so you're not so overwhelmed.
Indeed. And the email to use is support@jwsurvey.org if you are feeling overwhelmed with anxiety. Please do, Vicky, get in touch and we'll do our very best to help you. Thanks for that, Sherry. Okay, so Vicky's saying, I am a recovering brand Muslim. Wow. So there's a story there, almost certainly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Then reach out. Reach out.
Definitely. We don't limit ourselves purely to Jehovah's Witnesses. Tamar James saying, this is like living in the Blitz, World War III 2020 style. All of these suggestions are similar to what people had to live with during the war: rationing, curfew, community focus, make do and mend, etc. Scary times indeed, although again the extent to which they're scary depends at least to some degree on us and how we're managing our emotions. I think there's a lot to be said for achieving a sense of perspective on things and just being satisfied that you're doing the best that you can, and there are certain things that are just beyond your control, and just basically applying common sense to the situation. Jody Coyote says, excellent recommendations. Thank you. So, Sherry, lots of appreciation from the audience. Same from Gabrielle. Wow. Thank you, Sherry. I've lost my place in the comments, which happens occasionally. Kat Cat saying, thanks, Sherry D'Souza. Great tips. So much better than a text I got yesterday from an elder that it's the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Oh, good grief. Yeah, that's really going to help, isn't it? It's the 4 horsemen. Well, where are the locusts with men's faces and horses' bodies and scorpions' tails? Where are they exactly? Can't quite see them, and don't imagine seeing them anytime soon.
I mean, the other point to make here. Oh, sorry. After you, Arthur.
Yeah, the locusts with the faces of men and bodies of horses are a bit later in the timeline of the Great Tribulation.
Okay.
So we are now undoubtedly in the final part of the last days. Undoubtedly, evidently.
Indeed.
I mean, the other point to make on that is that if this was supposed to be the unprecedentedly bad times, and again, without minimizing it, this would be way worse than COVID-19.
Yeah.
I mean, if this was going to be, this is not the worst pandemic the world has ever seen. It's the worst one we've ever had. And it's certainly something, but this isn't the Black Death. This isn't something that's, if God was going to bring one of the horsemen of the apocalypse, he's kind of a bit underpowered in terms of this virus, to be honest.
Indeed. Another message from Vicky. Both my family shunned me when I became Muslim, and then shunned by Muslims when I rejected their extreme ideologies. It just shows, doesn't it, how widespread shunning is, and how it really does traverse different ideologies. It's in a way, it's kind of reaffirming to know that, it's not just that we're not alone as ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. We're not alone as
ex-cult members.
Cult members, yeah, because it really is such a universal experience. Another one from Esther saying, thank you for that, Sherry. Sherry is obviously smashing it out of the park with her performance in today's Coronavirus Lockdown live stream. Oh, gosh, I'm not even going to try. I'm obsessively watching Lloyd's live stream. Don't be too obsessive, for goodness sake. I mean, or if you are going to be obsessive, make sure you watch with a vitamin C drink. That's my pro tip for watching the Coronavirus Lockdown live stream.
I'd love to know the. Sorry, Arthur.
I wonder what that hexadecimal ID stands for in. That user's avatar screen name.
No, don't bore us with hexadecimal IDs. We're going to lose even more viewers than we lost during that descent into silliness earlier. What were you going to say, Sasha?
I'd like to know what the story is behind the avatar itself. That's very intriguing.
Oh gosh. It just looks like a cartoon character. Okay. OX53E71EB11E, please explain your avatar. It's a Twitch user, and maybe it's something. Maybe it's gaming related. Who knows? Please let us know.
Well, you should know that, Covert. Come on, you're the gamer of our group.
The gamer, yeah.
That avatar, I don't know. I've not seen that one.
Nesbo, also on Twitch, says, I can't see how witnesses can really believe this is the end. If I genuinely thought the world was going to end and my family was going to die, I would move heaven and earth to save them, yet no word from my mother and elder brother. That's true, isn't it? I mean, what does it say of believing family members if they're either sending a message that amounts to told you so, or they're not literally on your doorstep pleading with you, I think it speaks a lot to the dehumanizing element of the religion, the fact that it literally stops people from caring, I just don't care anymore, Yeah,
and interestingly enough, I mean, I've had the same thoughts, because I've when stuff like this happens, I'm partly glad that my family and my ex-JW, like my old JW friends, don't reach out to me, because it would be a conversation I don't want to have. But I'm also a little bit. It's interesting that you guys aren't talking to me if you genuinely think this is going to be my last chance to be saved. So that is, I feel you, Nesbo9. That is painful.
Eric Larson saying, contrast what Sherry said with Tony Morris. Doesn't bother me. We were expecting this. So frustrating. Yeah. Indeed, do contrast it, because you have a leader in the face of a pandemic saying, doesn't bother me. Here on a quote-unquote apostate channel, we mentally diseased apostates who apparently don't care about anything and have no morals whatsoever are giving actual practical advice on how to weather this pandemic. So let that speak for itself. Xilla says, thanks, Arthur Weather. So you are her hero, it would seem. And Lisa says, every time you ever put a comment up of mine, that's always the comment that has spelling errors. Well, you've spelled before wrong, haven't you? I need to read before sending. Shame on you, Lisa. Shame on you. We like to keep a high standard of grammar and spelling on the Coronavirus Lockdown Livestream, as everyone knows. Vicky Wells says, love coming here. It feels like the only place on the planet I can actually meet understanding people. Thanks so much. Love you all. Well, the feeling is mutual, Vicky. We are delighted to have you with us. And we hope it's the beginning of an exchange of support and encouragement. Okay. Oh gosh, right. I'm going to literally cover the screen with this, so brace yourselves, folks. Yeah, we've lost Arthur and Sherry in one foul swoop. What Sherry is doing sounds great. Similar approach to work being done in the mental health survivor movement. Religious trauma intersects with this, and I've been wondering about ways this can be addressed, as there are not many I know of in UK that deal with this. Only faith to faithless. Either way, it would be good to develop something. If people are under NHS mental health teams, they can ask to access the spiritual care team if their local trust has one. That's good advice. I didn't even know they had spiritual care teams. They deal with spiritual crisis, and that we've run out of space at that point. But yeah, good
Sherry,
advice.
can you...
Tamar, I've got to tell you, COVID has interrupted this, unfortunately, but in Vancouver at the end of April, we were going to have the first conference on religious trauma. The 3 days for therapists to come to, all sorts of individuals. It was going to be absolutely tremendous. It's postponed now until whenever it's going to end up being. But Marlene Winnell is the psychologist that developed the theory on religious trauma syndrome. And she, if my memory serves me right, her website is journeyfree.org. She's done a lot of work on this particular subject. And then there are a whole host of others, along with Recovering from Religion again and the Secular Therapy Project. But that will be the first conference on religious trauma, and I'm mad excited to get there when it eventually happens. It will just be fantastic.
Indeed. So, no, lovely to know that there are. I mean, it would be nice to have more than just faith to faithless in the UK, but it's nice to know that there are avenues for people who are struggling with spiritual abuse, you might call it. We're being taunted at this point. You guys sure have fun pronouncing my name. Evil. You're evil. You're taunting us at this
Very
point.
evil.
E71 EB11E. Let's just see here. Kat says the end is nigh. There's no way they will jeopardize their place in Panda Paradise. I think this is talking about people who are shunning us. It is very selfish, isn't it? It's putting themselves first ahead of their families, and to a degree as well. If you consider that shunning is something that isn't, well, it is obligatory, but there are also loopholes. So I think I've mentioned before on my channel that although it's a disfellowshipping offence under brazen conduct to fail to shun someone that you're not related to, you can have association with a family member who's disfellowshipped and not be disfellowshipped. It's just that you will lose your exemplary status and you will not qualify as an elder, which when I think of my dad, for example, I just think you literally care more about being an elder, than having contact with your family. So disturbing stuff. Tamar Jane says, excellent. I kind of work in this area, mental health, trauma, peer support, etc. Tamar, well, we'd love to hear from you more. Maybe we could even have you on a future coronavirus lockdown live stream with some advice in this area. Get in touch. The address to use, bear with me a moment. I need to get the banner up. Let's use this one. This is the address to use, Tamar. If you can reach out to us, it'd be lovely to have you on a future live stream with some advice on what mental health opportunities are available, if only in the UK, but maybe some of the advice can also be transferable. Folks, we are only 4 minutes or so away from reaching the 90-minute threshold. Sasha has promised to make a poem about summarizing what we've been discussing on the live stream. So because I don't want to offend him, I thought, okay, if you absolutely insist, I'm going to give you a minute to say a poem on the live stream. And take it away, Sasha.
Thank you for joining us for all this chat. There's many other things that you could have done, but that would have been a waste of your time. Instead, you got to hang out and hear me rhyme. Oh God!
It was a good effort. It was a good effort. Sure. Arthur, can you offer any poetic words of comfort at this time? I'm struggling to get his audio back on because I had to mute him before. Hang on. Right, now you're unmuted, Arthur.
Let me think a bit.
In any language.
No, don't tempt him there. He speaks like 5 languages.
English is fine, Sasha. So thank you for joining us to this 3rd episode of the Coronavirus Lockdown Livestream. Stay at home, stay safe, and see you tomorrow.
You see, at this point, Arthur, I invite you on as a guest, and you're literally trying to take my job. That wasn't even a poem. That was just you doing the outro. Good grief.
Hey, Lloyd, how good are you at spinning some rhymes off the top of your head, my friend?
We'll find out in a future episode. Covert, do you have any words of wisdom, poetic or otherwise?
I'm very bad at saying anything wise, so saying it in rhyme would be even more difficult.
He's so modest, isn't he? Sherry, having stolen the show earlier, do you have any prescient words of wisdom?
Just hang in there, everybody, and see the funny side of life. You got to laugh. You have to laugh. We'll all get through. That's all I got.
We're all in this together.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And Vicky appreciates Sasha's poetry, so clearly there's demand for it. We can safely say when I pounce on him in future, it's by popular demand, because at least Vicky appreciates Sasha's poetry.
In the absence of anything better, people will take whatever they can get. It's a bit like the items on the supermarket shelves. They'll just buy whatever's there.
I don't know whether Joelle is referring here to the pandemic or Sasha's poetry, but she is correct in saying that we will survive. And with that, viewers, that more or less takes us to 90 minutes. I hope you have enjoyed the Coronavirus Lockdown Livestream Part 3. Bear in mind that you can follow along live on facebook.com/Lloyd Evans Cedars, or on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/Lloyd Evans. If you can't follow along live, you at least get to watch on YouTube, as I'm sure many of you are now doing. But I hope you've enjoyed our episode. Lots of love and feelings of positivity, including from a stuffed panda, from everyone on this particular episode. And we will see you again soon. Take care.
See you, everyone.
Bye.
See ya. Bye-bye.